I think the biggest takeaway that I'm hearing is expectations. Make sure that
Sure.
your customer is very well aware of what could happen and what most likely will happen, especially with this substrate.
Absolutely.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Court Pro podcast, where we encourage and equip you with everything you need to start and grow a thriving court business to fuel your family's vision. Every episode, you'll hear interviews, trainings, and conversations revolving around the hard and soft skills of athletic court construction and surfacing, plus some bonus tips on how to grow as a father as you run your business. My name's Joe, and I'm a husband and father of 4 kids. I was able to bring in $300,000 of revenue in year 1 of my surfacing business and over $1 million in year 2. This business has blessed my family tremendously, and I'm super excited to help you guys, other hardworking dads, create a true economic engine for your own family. If you'd like to learn more about what entering into a season of court business coaching might look like for you, visit courtprocoaching.com to see more details about our exclusive content and community of fellow court installers across the country. Let's jump into today's episode. Awesome, guys. Welcome back to our latest video. I'm here with my buddy, Brent Poss. Welcome, Brent. Glad you're here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Super excited to have you on today. I'll just do a quick intro for you, and you fill in the gap on your own life. But yeah, Brent's been super helpful to me as I've gotten started in our business. About 4 or 5 years ago, I started looking into this and found a Facebook group called the Backyard Pickleball Court Owners Facebook group. And just started getting all the knowledge that I never knew I needed on what are some typical problems with courts. How should you think about courts? What are the differences in the different, the different substrates? How do you think about, tool marks on courts? Like why is there a pour mark there? Why is there a squeegee mark there? Super helpful for me to kind of accelerate my understanding of the court world. And then on top of that, Brent, you're the president at CourTex. You guys have got an amazing thing rocking in Texas. So yeah, any other quick details? Sorry to steal your thunder, but super glad you're here. Would love for you to fill in any gaps on who you are in this world of courts.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That Backyard Pickleball group page has become one that people kind of across the internet in the pickleball world or even the court building world have kind of know me a little bit on, because I talk a lot. I prefer to talk online than in person, actually. But it is true that I see a lot of misinformation and information that folks believe is the best route. And I just want folks to have the right tools to make the right decisions. And, I don't really advertise much on that group at all.
I've never seen anybody shepherd a Facebook group quite as effectively as you. You are, I always tell you, it's like your other full-time job. It's incredible. Yeah.
Well, I do spend a lot of time in that. I appreciate that. I don't want people to feel like I'm forcing anything, which I've come across that way. I know it does, but I'm so passionate and adamant on the things that I've learned that I just want to give that information. And so it does come across as a little maybe some unbending on some of my beliefs.
Well, I think it's strength. I think, when we always talk about how many variables there are in court building, and we've done a lot of having this discussion around. There's a lot of us new guys that are coming into this industry. And you really there has to be a voice that says, hey, that's actually out of line. That's actually incorrect. And you have, for a grand total of $0, I think, said, I'll be that guy. So we're super grateful for you. I know all my guys, I'm like, one of the first things I say is join this Facebook group and just listen to Brent and Weston and some of these other guys just course correct some of these customers and contractors. So it's a big blessing for us. So, all right.
Thank you.
Today's topic is what everybody just thinks about in their spare time. What are the substrates of a pickleball or tennis court or basketball court? So I want to maybe break down these 3 options. And I know we're going to kind of go from maybe lower end to kind of Cadillac version of what the foundation of your court is. So the 3 main options are to do asphalt, which you don't see a whole lot of down south in Texas. And then you've got reinforced concrete, and then you've got post-tension concrete, which we don't see a whole lot of here in the Midwest. So I know a lot of us, we've got guys in the Carolinas, Minnesota, like we we're trying to figure out how to connect with the right post-tension guys to make that more of a
Sure.
reality here. But yeah, maybe you could just take I'll just turn you loose, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about the difference on these, and how we as contractors and how customers should think about, these three different options.
Absolutely. And I want to first start out by saying that I'm fully aware that in different parts of the country, things are done a little bit differently.
Sure.
You mentioned that you don't see a whole lot of asphalt in Texas. Actually, you used to. A lot
interesting.
Of it.
Okay.
A lot of it. And the reason why we don't anymore is because we used to. And the climates that we have,
yeah,
and the weather and the heat and the flexible soils, and a lot of the reasons that we have that are a little bit unique to this large area of Texas are the reasons why asphalt is not the best choice. Now, it still can be done, and it still is done on occasion, but you have to really, really, really prepare properly. Your subgrade below the asphalt is extremely important. That's one of the reasons why post-tension or even just rebar concrete has become so common in Texas, is because there's less of that need. You still need to prepare. You still need some of that, but post-tension, and we'll get into that, can cure a lot of those issues and ills without having to go too much. Because here's the thing. If you're doing a backyard court and you know that a soils report is going to tell you you've got to excavate 4 feet of native soil, bring in 4 feet of with 8-inch lifts of compacted limestone, then you put your asphalt down. That's going to be probably good. You're just going to boost up your cost to the point of you could have post-tension concrete and have it be a lot easier.
Go all the way in. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, and also I will say that, the number one thing, as you guys doing courts will know, is that you want to mitigate cracking.
Yes.
Cracking is the number one enemy that we all face in this court building business.
Yes.
Cracks become very, very difficult to control, to make better, to hide, to fix, repair, all that stuff. So if we can limit that need, we're limiting our maintenance as we go forward in business. The post-tension courts that we do, they're very long lasting, and the cracks stay very hairline, and hairline cracks are, maybe slightly seen and a little unsightly slightly, but they're not a problem when it comes to playability, even functionality, and even maintenance. And so we're trying to do the best that we can for the longest term. Other parts of the country, asphalt is great, and it can be great, especially if that subgrade is done well and the right materials are used. And it's true that a lot of people aren't looking for a 50-year lasting court. They're looking for a 10-year one, and they're going to move. And I get that, but we're under the mindset of build it the best that you can, especially considering our prices when it comes to like post-tension concrete are not, people think, oh, I've gotten quotes, it's 50% more. Not even close in our area, because it is very available. And, we kind of do everything in-house for the most part when it comes to that stuff.
Right.
But, I don't know how much detail you want me to get into the post-tension or the concrete part.
I would say, I know on the asphalt, and we've got a whole nother video on asphalt. So maybe we could really drill into the difference between these two types of concrete. So you've got, like you said, rebar, reinforced rebar concrete. Maybe you can talk about fibers, mesh, like, what to stay away from. And then, how a lot of guys have not heard about post-tension concrete before.
Okay.
So what the heck is that? Yeah.
Okay. No, absolutely. So, reinforced rebar concrete, we've all seen that. You form your slab up, you put your fill, you put your beams, if you got perimeter beams, whatnot, and then you put steel for reinforcement at whatever intervals that for your area and what it calls for. Strong slab. You're going to get a strong slab with rebar. It's going to hold it together. That's all really good. The problem is, especially in climates like ours in Texas, where the extremes of temperatures are dramatic. I mean, we can have 50-degree swings in a single day, very easily. And so, not just that, the extremes of the high and sometimes the lows. Nothing like you guys get in the north, but there are some times where it gets pretty cold, but we get really high and really hot for long periods of time. So the shrinkage cracks is the issue. You're not going to be able to do anything about shrinkage cracks when you've got rebar. It's going to hold it together, but those shrinkage cracks are going to come. So then it means that you really do need saw cuts or some kind of joints, or you have the alternative of just letting it spider crack. And that's another issue, is that in the court building world, kind of the old school world, you've never seen a tennis court, or not properly built one, that has saw cuts, because we all know that it's very challenging to cover, hide, maintain those.
Yes.
If you have to do them, net line and outside of play is the way you do it. But we're under the feeling that if you have to do rebar for whatever reason, post tension is not available or possible or whatever, we prefer to have some spider hairline cracking that doesn't affect play and you can hardly see, as opposed to the thick, directed saw cuts that you have to fill, have to surface, and have to maintain. That can eventually become a problem.
Yeah, it could be a ball balance issue. It could be
yeah,
it's certainly unsightly. You almost always get a hairline crack along the saw cuts.
sure.
And then, yeah, I mean, potentially a tripping hazard even. So yeah,
It can. It depends on how big you do them, and that's why net line and outside of play is best if you can. But sometimes people
So
do.
would you would suggest for a rebar enforced slab to put well, I'll show up to a 30 by 60 pad, and the contractor just sliced sliced it 10 feet every way, and I've got a million of these things. You would suggest just putting one along the line, along the net line, and then leave it at that, or would you put two outside the sidelines, or how would you think about that?
So here's the truth: is that when we have to do them, we really prefer the one at the net line, and then we don't want any other ones because we don't want to deal with all that maintenance and some of those issues.
Right.
We know for a fact that it's pretty unlikely that it's not going to crack. I mean, it is going to have some cracking. They're probably going to stay hairline if we did our base and our subgrade and our rebar properly, and we have a good mix and a good mix design, and we did it at the right time and all that. Poured it with the right amount of slump and all that. I think we're pretty confident that it's going to be solid. I know we are, but we know it's going to have some hairlines.
Right.
We surface that. We can repair those to some degree in surfacing, but they're going to show up. They're going to be there, and they're going to be something that people have to know that they have.
Why install cracks when you don't have to, right? Like that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I know that if you do them, and I've had this debate or whatever you call it with homeowners and with people online and other contractors. Oh, you've got to saw cut. You have to do it every interval. Yeah. It is true that it's better for the concrete. I will never disagree with that. If you have a driveway, if you have a patio,
right,
absolutely. But you're coating it with a sports coating, and if you're coating it with a sports coating and you're playing sports on it, you want to minimize those imperfections or those things that are going to make it potentially a problem. So, we prefer to have spider cracks that are so small that really don't affect anything than to have these thick saw cuts that have to be filled and maintained and dealt with. That's why post tension is something that we really, really like, because you don't saw cut post tension. Post tension has steel cables at larger intervals than the rebar.
Yep.
They stick out of the concrete. It's called post tension because after a little bit of curing time, you come back and you stress the cables. You're compressing the cables and it's compressing the concrete. So that cracking that has happened and it's going to happen, it's all squeezed together under all this tension, post tension.
Yeah.
What people a lot of times don't realize is that it's actually very dangerous to drill into a post tension slab, like with drill holes for net post or fence or whatever, because it's very dangerous. It's like kind of the idea of you break a guitar string and a guitar string, boom, goes up. That's what those cables do, but they've got concrete and it'll just fly up. And so you got to be really careful. But the benefit is that you don't have near the amount of cracking, and the cracks that you do have are really held and sucked up together and stay pretty small, so they're not a long-term issue, and that's the goal of post-tension.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's such a good summary. Yeah, thanks so much for that. That's like a lot. Like I said, a lot of guys are like post-tension. Like, is that some kind of additive that you put in the concrete?
Yeah.
Okay, so the tension itself is actually holding. So you're saying that the slab actually it's going to crack in spots, but it's actually held together.
That's the thing that I want to make clear, and that people go, oh, you do post tension. No, that's the crack-free concrete. Absolutely not. Concrete is going to crack. If it doesn't, then everything was perfect. The conditions were perfect. Everything was perfect. So the mitigation, the controlling of the cracking is why post tension is so good to do, is that when you get those, you can squeeze it together, and then where are they going to go? They're held up with so much pressure that there's just not much movement it could then do. And so there are some design things and building techniques that you use to kind of keep that to a minimum. For example, this is just an example. If you put your light piers on a court really close to and connected to your post tension, deep into the earth, we're going to have cracking at those locations because there's going to be some force and something's going to win.
Yeah.
What's going to win is that deep light anchor in concrete that's a lot of times in rock around here that is not going to move. It's the rest of it's going to crack. So if you can have some separation in those areas, do some other things, and there are some tricks to the trade that you learn that are just better, but you can never expect completely crack free. But you always want them to be outside of play and not affect the inner part, and that's what's most important.
Okay. So all right, I've got a case study for you. I want your opinion on this. So you guys show up to a court. Tell me if you would even take this job. You show up to a court and it's rebar and they have put saw cuts in it and they're like, Brent, surface this thing and make it look great. What do you do to those saw cuts?
Yeah, so obviously there's going to be a lot of situations. They happen all the time. And you just have to be as upfront and honest with them as you can. We'll take the manufacturer's crack filler, we'll clean out those cracks, we'll fill them, we'll do the AR, we'll do everything we can to hide those. They're going to look really good right off the bat. That's the thing. It's going to look great. In fact, in some cases, you may faintly see it. The issue is that's not going to stay that way.
Right.
That expansion joint, that saw cut, which is meant to direct the movement, is going to move.
Yeah.
And the thought of any crack filler or paint holding together concrete is silly. It's not going to. So we just let people know that expect that is going to come back, and you're going to have to maintain them over time.
So expectations are the first thing. So you're saying you would actually fill them with a patch mix or a sport patch.
Yeah.
Some guys would say just put acrylic paint in there, maybe fill them in, do a shadow coat of extra, like maybe sandier mix of AR or something. Well, how do you feel about that approach?
I think that you're going to have less life if you do that, because again, that's just putting more material in there. It's less strength. And those crack, the manufacturer's crack filler compounds are meant for having some flexibility to have some movement. So it's going to last longer that way. Use the V-squeegee and get them the best that you can, but just don't tell people that it's going to stay that way. You got to be upfront. Yeah. If they see it on day one and it looks amazing, look, all of our contracts and everything we say is we talk about cracking. Some cracks are going to reappear, some as early as overnight, because here in Texas, that is absolutely true.
That's true here. Mornings, I'll tell you, I used to think it was, hey, in the next 6 months, it might show up. It's like, no, like it might show up tomorrow.
And depends on the time of day. We'll have people go, hey, we had a crack over here. And I said, can you just take a picture? And they go, I went back in the afternoon. And I can't even see it.
Yeah. We had a court at the end of the year last year in October. So the temperatures were really fluctuating. Yeah. And we had filled a decent sized crack, and we came and the customer was like, hey, this cracked again. And then same exact thing. Later, when it warmed up, it just went stuck back together. Yep. Yeah.
It moves a lot with movement, with the ground movement, and again, setting expectations. And some people, they get that. They go, I know. Other people expect it. And that's another thing with a surfacing job or a resurfacing job. Their expectation is that you've fixed all the subsurface imperfections. It's just a Band-Aid. So there's only so much you can do.
No doubt. Do you have a second to talk like overlays? I know I'm throwing this one at you unscripted, but like overlay systems, I know like there's these mat systems, like a free floating mat system versus a bonded mat system. How are you open to talking about some of what you guys have tried, and even some like there's right way or fault line, some of these crack repair systems? How have you seen those over time? How long are these things lasting for you guys? What are you guys into these days?
Well, we know that from our experience that the crack systems, right way being, in our opinion, the best of the group, they work pretty well on asphalt. For those that do asphalt, they can be absolutely a good place to have them in the market. On concrete, because of the movement of the concrete, it doesn't seem to do as well, because they're flexible, but they're not as flexible as they need to be when it comes to concrete movement. So we do some of that. Again, we tend to have it be an extra, obviously an add-on that folks can say, okay, here's what your expectations are. Sometimes they want to just have a temporary fix and have it resurface for just a couple years and go with that. One thing as a former tennis player and even a pickleball player, I'm really aware of aesthetics versus functionality. Sure. And just because you're hiding a crack and just because it's not visible and being seen doesn't mean that it's going to completely be a good solid surface. And we all know tennis, it's a minor thing because tennis balls have some rebound to them no matter what they're bouncing on. Right. But pickleballs are very unforgiving when it comes to hard surfaces and having any kind of voids underneath. And so we always want to set expectations about, would you rather see a small crack and it plays pretty well, or not see it at all and potentially have some issues, especially with the extremes of temperatures that we have here. So, we cautiously use them. They can absolutely be beneficial in certain situations, but it's very important how they're applied and when they're applied. Yeah. And you got to do it the right way.
So good. Well, this has been great. I think having this breakdown for guys to understand, right, you've got asphalt, you've got rebar in your concrete. If you go that route, then you've got saw cuts to consider, where to put them, how many to put in there. And then, how, if at all, what do you put in those things to make them work? And then, so I think the biggest takeaway that I'm hearing is expectations. Make sure that your customer is very well aware of what could happen and what most likely will happen, especially with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially in areas where something like post-tension is a significantly more expensive option.
Yeah.
I don't mean to imply to the folks on the page, for example, that if they don't do post-tension, their core's not going to be any good.
Sure.
That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when that option is available, and if it is within the budgets, consider it, because we all want to have something that lasts longer, whether it's for our own, ourselves, or family, or for the next person. Anything you can do to mitigate that.
Yeah, it's important. a good, better, best. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, for sure.
No doubt. Awesome, Brent. This has been super helpful. Thank you so much for taking some time, and
for sure.
Yeah, super grateful for all that you're doing for us contractors, and especially the customers that we're trying to serve. So awesome. Thanks.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Well, guys, thanks for listening to today's episode. If you'd like to learn more about CourtPro coaching or discover what a season of coaching might look like for you, visit courtprocoaching.com. We'll see you for the next episode.